It's an awesome son.
Austin Fitzpatrick is a Louisvillian.
Loved the outdoors, loved animals, a little bit of a free spirit. I mean, he would come down to the lake and he would take a kayak out. He may be gone 4 hours.
Creative, talented artist, outdoorsman.
And he would just camp out on one of the islands down at Lake Nolan and just put a hammock up in a tree and hang out.
He's kind, he's loving, he's supportive. Austin Fitzpatrick was compassionate.
He was that person. He was very spontaneous. If a friend called in another state over and needed something, and he would drop everything and just go. That's just the way he was. He was that kind of person. He would go and help anybody in need, anytime, so very adventurous.
His sense of adventure took him to the Red River Gorge to do some camping with his girlfriend mid-November of 2020.
I'll never forget it. Austin was killed roughly between 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. He had just decided he was going to go home and check on his cat, and that's when he was apparently ambushed. There was a witness across the street, supposedly that did see some things. It sounded like he fought him, and he had all his camping gear, in his hands, walking towards his house, and he just basically opened fire on him in the foyer of his house to get his car keys, and then they rolled off in his car and wrecked it within probably 4 or 5 minutes of stealing it. Went outside, nobody was there, and then I heard my ex-wife screaming. I found out that my son was killed. It was life-changing. You're in shock. You've lost your son to a carjacking. Is it worth killing somebody over a car that you wrecked within 4 or 5 minutes of stealing it? Your life changed, and you're still trying to process. It's tough.
A process Leo is still going through. His son's homicide is unsolved.
I knew it happened, and I know to solve crimes, you have to try to get as much information as you can quickly.
A detective took on the case and it remains active, but Leo knew he would have to get involved himself for the best possible outcome.
I worked with the detective. I also got on the Nextdoor app in Old Louisville, and I pleaded with all the folks in Old Louisville to look at their cameras and just look for anything that happened that particular evening. Sometimes people don't want to get involved, but he was my son. These people that are dying, they have families, they belong to people, and you just can't sit there and crawl in your hole when you have information that could lead to the arrest of these people that are committing these horrendous crimes.
Across town, 1 week after Austin was killed, another young Louisvillian was killed in a carjacking. Hamza Nagdi, who went by Travis, is charismatic. He's energetic, a uniting force. Travis is loud, but his bullhorn, always in hand, made him heard.
Definitely early on, not the first protest, but it was pretty early on.
It's hard to remember my life beforehand because there's just been so much.
Found his purpose, and you couldn't pull him away from it.
He's an activist.
It's not a moment, it's definitely a movement.
A builder. He's a symbol. Travis Nagdi was compassionate and took to the streets to show it.
We're all just worried about everybody being safe. We just need people to be safe, or all of this was for nothing.
He was the sweetest kid, and me using the past tense is so weird now that he's not here, but of course his spirit is with me, but no mom wants to describe their kid in the past tense.
Late on Sunday night, Travis left the home he shared with his girlfriend and went to start his car to go to an all-hands-on-deck for protesters in the Louisville community. From FBI documents, we know Travis's girlfriend heard him fighting with the suspect, so she walked outside the home and towards the car, where on the driver's side, Travis and the carjacker continued to argue. Then, 3 gunshots. The carjacker hops in and takes off. Travis is left laying in the middle of the road, shot multiple times. His mom will never forget when the phone rang and she was told Travis had been shot.
I just would say that it was surreal when I got the call, and all I can say is God was with me because I don't know how I held it together on that ride. I was trying to remain hopeful, like maybe he's shot in his arm or something. You know, I guess you're trying to bargain and say, you know, I'm gonna get there and it's not gonna be that bad. Because like, no one wants to hear of their child dying in such a violent way.
Hamza Travis Nagdi died at the hospital on November 23rd.
It's still new to me. Yeah, there's that initial shock of finding out, okay, them telling you the words that your son's dead, but processing that and not being able to say goodbye, not being able to go back in the hospital room or hold my child's hand. It was probably best to protect me, you know, from what I would have seen, so that I can remember him as his beautiful soul that he was, and not what I would have seen that the doctor saw.
While doctors broke the news to his family and they prepared to bury their loved one, the investigation was just beginning. Police recovered Travis's white sedan wrecked into another car on Lynn Street in St. Joseph. When police searched the car, they found a pair of glasses on the dashboard. They didn't belong to Travis. Throughout the course of the next few weeks, police received tips from people in the community brave enough to come forward and help with this case. Those tips pointed them towards evidence until LMPD had enough to charge Ashton Nally with murder, robbery, and possession of a handgun by a felon. And the FBI announced Nally would also face federal carjacking charges. Now the family is waiting, trying to find out what happens next in the trial, sitting with their unbearable grief and constant heartbreak.
My son is still gone. I mean, yes, that's happy. Justice will be served. It's like someone took my heart. Because my heart hurts every time if I think about him.
The losses of Travis and Austin are heart-wrenching, but they're just two lives of the hundreds of carjacking victims in the past 2 years. Coming up, what police say ties these suspects together, why cars are being stolen and not sold.
We're not going away. We understand that this is a problem and it's continued to be a problem, and we're working specifically to stop the individuals who are committing these heinous crimes.
And what is driving teenagers to commit violent carjackings? Next.